Hello everyone, I'm Elena and this is Applewood Tarot. Today's video is a VR to Feeding My Soul and her tag, Show Us Your Decks. The first prompt is a deck that you want to use, but it hasn't seen any playtime on your table. For me, that's Mystical Lenormand. I have a few Lenormand decks, but don't use them very much because my focus has been on tarot. This particular deck I bought secondhand, and I like all of the extra symbolism it has compared to other decks. The little white book doesn't go very deep into it, so I need to take the time to do my own research and really dive in. I love how it feels like a storybook. I love how that stars card looks like a wizard's observatory. And that was Mystical Lenormand. Next is the 12th deck from the right on your tarot shelf. I keep my decks in a trunk, and the rows are not easily distinguished, but I did my best and ended up with Shadowscapes Tarot. This is actually my first deck ever. I remember being at Barnes & Noble and spotting this on the shelf, and I just fell in love. This star always reminds me of Maggie from Daughters of the Moon. Shout out in the comments if you've read that series. It's one of my favorite hermits. One of my favorite magicians is in here too. Let me know if you want a closer look at any of these, by the way, like a walkthrough or anything like that. There's that magician. Love him. I'm sorry I'm not giving much commentary. I just get lost in this art. But to be fair, it is a perfect deck. I've heard complaints that the art is too detailed for this size, but I don't think so. Now, Josephine Wall, her artwork needs to be at least the size of a wall calendar to do it justice. I love it, but in deck form, it just does not do it for me. And that was the Shadowscapes Tarot. The third prompt is a deck that you're thinking of rehoming. I do not rehome my deck, so I'll go ahead and skip that one. Then it's a deck you don't store in its original box and why. A good amount of my decks I keep in bags, usually because they come in a tuck box. I'm clumsy with those and hate to damage them, so I use a bag instead. But for this prompt, I chose an unusual case, and that's the Mystical Cats Tarot. This one comes in one of those larger book-like boxes, but I still felt encouraged to move it to a bag. I don't know if it's because it's a cat deck and cats like bags, but I followed my gut and removed it from its box. This is such a cute deck and perfectly shows the spirit of cats. I have a cat myself, and yeah, it's pretty spot on. I love how Judgment is called Good Kitty, because of course it is. Strength Cars is so cute. This is another I don't have much to say about because I'm just like so cute at everything. Oh, that hermit. And that was the Mystical Cats Tarot. Now for a deck with more or less than 78 cards. This could be almost any of my oracles, but I feel like this calls for an unusual tarot. So, here is Into the Wilds Tarot. It's a partial Wheatsmith clone. Most of the cards are animal versions of that deck, but not all of them. I love this deck. I had my eye out for an animal deck for a good while. There are some really beautiful ones out there, but for some reason I just never pulled the trigger on any of them. I'm very glad I waited because when I saw this deck, I knew it was the one. This Nine of Cups. It pretty closely mimics the Waite-Smith image, except I never understood the Waite-Smith image until I saw that smug little panda and it just clicked. So that's why this deck to me is more than a Waite-Smith clone. It expands my understanding of that original artwork. The animal choices are perfect. The guidebook does not explain why certain animals were chosen, and I know that can be a turnoff for some people. It doesn't bother me because it's clear as day. A cow is perfect as the Empress. All of the animal choices are so well done. See, doesn't that make perfect sense? I love how that King of Wand has crazy eyes. And that was Into the Wild Tarot. The next prompt is a deck with a cloud on the box. The clouds may be a little difficult to see here, but I chose Unveiling the Golden Age Tarot. I call this creator's work, her name is Izzy Ivy, like Lisa Frank for grown-ups. Those vivid colors and psychedelic patterns. At the same time, it pulls you into this spiritual side of the world. Now, she does talk a lot about Lemuria in the guidebook, which, from my understanding, is basically Atlantis, but she does so in a grounded way. It's less determining whether or not you're a starseed, and instead how we combine past and present wisdom in order to heal and make a better future. Which I wish more people did, and more people had that perspective. I wouldn't recommend this deck to beginners, but it's another one that is so easy for me to understand. Especially the Pentacle suit, which here is called Earth Guardians. Again, let me know if you want to see more than a flip through of any of these, and I'll see what I can do. This one reframes what are usually considered negative cards to be less so, which I usually dislike, but I see this deck as having more of a cosmic perspective, and when you zoom out enough, nothing is positive or negative. It's all just is. It's all universal love, so I'm willing to forgive it. There's so much to this deck, but it also speaks so clearly. that was Unveiling the Golden Age Tarot. Next is a deck you've never shown on your channel. I had a few options but landed on Spirit Carrier Oracle. This is a more than rune deck. I have a general rule to not pre-order or crowdfund anything for various reasons, but this one I had to get. It was featured on one of Lisa Pepez's hot takes, and I fell in love with it. I also felt I could trust her go-ahead in regards to trusting the creator. So thank you, Lisa. Rune decks were another thing I had considered for a while, but ultimately I decided that I don't need them. I have runes and want to use them in that more traditional form. But this, like I said, is more than runes. As you can see, there are rune combinations, stones, found objects. The titles allow for a multitude of meanings, and it's all pretty clear when in the right mindset. It also makes a lot of sense to me with how I understand the runes. I like how unique this is. It reminds me of Wendy Froud's work. And this would actually go so well with that book she wrote with her husband, Fairy's Tales. This actually goes very well with the deck I'll show for the last prompt. It's so gorgeous. It's so earthy and lovely, and I'm really happy with it. And that was Spirit Carrier Oracle. Now is a deck with another animal besides a lion on the strength card. I've chosen Labyrinth Tarot. I know a lot of people dislike this deck. Many of them had pre-ordered it and so were unaware of the final product, which is one of the reasons I don't do that, but I really like it. The artwork is amazing, and I don't mind that it's a pip deck. I like that some of the characters were pulled from the Goblin Companion. I like that it can be as shallow or as layered as you want it to be. Like with Strength here. On the surface, it's a big strong robot with thick armor. But this guy, whose name is Humongous, has a little goblin manning the controls in his head. So brute strength is controlled by something smaller but smarter than it. Then you can go deeper because in the movie, another character chucks that goblin out and tries but fails to man the controls himself. That shows there's a right and wrong way to handle force. So there's actually a lot you can dive into with something so simple. I like that this deck allows for interpreting not only according to the common tarot meanings, but also what you get from the film. Everyone has a unique relationship with it and can bring that to how they see these cards. I just realized that this strength technically doesn't have any animal in it, it's a robot. I think it still counts. There's that goblin that controls Humongous. That was Labyrinth Tarot. Next one is a deck that comes in a box inside another box. The only one I have like that is Tarot Landscapes. I don't know how many people have seen it at this point, but I feel it's fairly popular. Mine is pretty warped, as you can tell. This deck is so calming. This one has a lot of layers to it too, if you're willing to dive in. I know it's not for everyone. I showed this to a friend of mine and she said there was no way she would be able to read with it. But I find it speaks pretty clearly, and sometimes it can get almost literal, which is strange. I had an interesting moment with the Queen of Cups that I might talk about at some other point. I want to live there. That was Tarot Landscapes. Up next is a deck that would not be in your top 10 favorites. Here is the Story Oracle. I got this to help my writing, which is what it's for, but I don't write much anymore, so I may start using it as I do most of the others. It's very good at stimulating ideas, and the artwork, to my mind, has the same vibe as Word documents, and I mean that as a good thing, as it puts me in the frame of mind to write. But I can't really call it beautiful, and I don't gush over it the same way I do with other decks, though I do appreciate it for what it is. It has a lot of potential to enhance my practice in a big way if I let it. I should really spend more time with this deck. This is the most modern of my decks. I love that card. That was the Story Oracle. Now, for a deck you associate with the color green, I chose John Bauer Tarot. I love green, but green very much has its own vibe. Ooh, that's one of my favorite death cards. If you've seen The Green Knight, think of the lady's monologue about the color green. This was the most challenging prompt for me because that's the specific feeling I want to grasp. Now that I think of it, this deck has some of the feel of the Green Knight. It's a fairy tale world, with that blend of Christianity and paganism. Nature and nature spirits seem to press in, even when they're not visible. Love that tower. I think a good amount of people find this deck confusing or otherwise dislike it, but I love it. I had considered getting the Arthur Rackham Tarot, but I saw someone else's collection video who had both the Arthur Rackham and the John Bower, one right after the other, and when I saw this, I knew this was the one. That was the John Bower Tarot. Next is a second-hand, pre-loved, pre-owned, thrifted deck. I had several of these to choose from, but settled on Fairy Magic. This is actually a sort of booster pack and meant for storytelling, not divination. The backs, as you can see, have prompts meant to help you come up with ways to further your story. Though they work equally well at helping you along if your intuition needs a bit of a push. This was gifted to me by someone who may have bought it secondhand herself, so do I get bonus points for that? Despite how few cards there are, and the fact that they're meant for stories, they do work very well in divination. This one is enough for me, but I imagine you could get several of these decks and combine them to make a master deck. That might be fun. That was fairy magic. The next one is a deck with the most used guidebook. For me, that is Alice Tarot. Here's a little white book, though you can't really see its wear. I bought this at a very reasonable price from a used bookstore that did not know what they had. Whoever owned this before me loved it well, which I'm actually glad about because otherwise I may have been overly precious about it and bewailed its first scuff. But things are meant to be used, and I enjoy using this. This deck reminds me of a particular Alice movie. It was made for TV, and I remember Whoopi Goldberg played the Cheshire Cat. It was so weird. There are hidden faces in this deck. See how many you can find. That was the Alice Tarot. Next to last is a deck with water on the box. I had a surprisingly few to choose from, but I landed on the Journey Oracle. This one makes me think of one of my favorite children's books, Chrysanthemum, even though the artwork isn't to like. has that quiet, observant feeling that I often had as a kid. There's an underlying melancholy to it. It's hopeful, but also feels sad. I love that Dare card. I like that the titles are action-based. I can ask, what should I do about X? And it gives me a mostly straightforward answer. The artwork itself also has a lot that you can expand on. This is another one that's so calming to look at. And I love how the little apple dresses. That was Journey Oracle. Finally, we have a deck with your most favorite card ever and why. That's Fairies Oracle. I am so glad to have this in my life. I remember seeing it and Heart of Fairy online, and my heart. It feels like home. That's the best way I can describe it. It brings up so many feelings for me that I can't put to words. Which is a shame because the prompt asks for explanation. But I can't give one besides, this is home. I'm comfortable here. Not to say that this world feels 100% safe. And here's my favorite card, the Green Woman. Again, I can't verbalize why she's my favorite. She just. She brings a special kind of joy. I don't know if any of that made much sense, but I did the best I could. That was Fairy's Oracle. And that was the final prompt. Make sure to check out Feeding My Soul, who started this tag, Show Us Your Decks. Thank you all so much for sharing your time with me. I hope you had fun, and will join me again soon. See you next time.